Hey everybody, Gromos here with some more helicopter gameplay in DCS, this time taking a look at the Mi-8M, the last of the currently 3 helicopters available in DCS, though the Gazelle is supposed to come soon as well, and I hope more helicopters beyond that. I'm really enjoying playing helicopters at the moment. The maneuverability and possibility to land in close quarters, hover and other things just make those helis really fun to fly. So I figured I also show you the Mi-8, introduce this helicopter a bit and show you a mission to show off some of its capabilities in DCS. Now in comparison to the Ka-50 and the UH-1, the Mi-8M is again a very different beast and a new experience. The helicopter, also known under its export designation Mi-17, is a transport helicopter, but it can, just like the UE, also carry weapons and act as a gunship, though as with the UH-1 this is not its primary role. And as you will see, it is also quite a bit larger than the UE, and with its empty weight of about 7.4 tons, also more than 3 times as heavy as a UH-1 with its roughly 2.4 tons empty weight. That makes flying the Mi-8 a very different experience than the UE, which is currently the lightest helicopter in DCS and when not loaded too heavily quite agile. The Mi-8M has a lot of power though, and it is faster than the UE. The thing is, one of the well-known traits of piloting a helicopter is input lag, meaning it will often take a few seconds or so for control inputs like collective adjustments to show their full effect. That is one of the things that makes flying a helicopter challenging, and a thing new pilots need to get used to. Not to constantly overcorrect. Specifically when hovering you need a bit of foresight and patience. With the Mi-8 being pretty heavy, this kind of input lag is quite noticeable, more so than on the UH-1 in my opinion. Meaning that it does need some patience in tight quarters when hovering and landing, for example. If you rush things, they have a tendency to go wrong. Also, with the input lag on the collective, the helicopter easily gets into a vortex ring state, if you're not careful while descending in a hover. Vortex ring state, or short VRS, is when the helicopter descends into its own rotor downwash too fast, which results in the rotor blades losing lift. A common cause for crashes for helicopters, and in DCS for the Mi-8 most likely by far the most common cause for crashes. So there are quite a few things one has to keep in mind just flying helicopters, without even going into combat missions and the like, but that is also a large part of the fun factor in helicopters in DCS, that you can build missions around something simple like carrying cargo, and it provides a lot of challenge and fun gameplay, and just managing a good landing in tight quarters feels quite rewarding. Now the Mi-8 is also a bit more modern of a helicopter than the UH-1, and it does get a few extra gizmos to play with that can be very helpful. On top of the ADF and VHF homing, which we also have on the UH-1, the Mi-8 is also equipped with a Doppler navigation system to aid in navigation, and also to help during hovering, giving you a more precise idea of your speed in all directions, as well as your rate of descent. And that is a very useful tool to have in a helicopter and makes holding the aircraft stable in a hover easier, as it provides your velocity in all directions, not just forward, and the standard speed indicator won't work at the low speeds you have in a hover anyway. So when you have to hover a bit over some cargo, for example, till the ground crew has it hooked up, this makes your life a lot easier. Now in a transport role the Mi-8M can carry about 3 to 4,000 kilos either internally, in the cabin, or externally as a sling load, so it can carry up to 30 troops. Though of course transport missions is not all the Mi-8 can do. If it is equipped with external hardpoints, the helicopter can also carry weapons, and quite a few of them, and be used as a gunship. Though it is not perfect in that role, being primarily a transport helicopter, so that is an option that is more meant for what is called low-intensity conflicts. It does increase the options we have though. Still, on its 6 hardpoints it can carry a good amount of ordnance, with the most common weapon being carried being rocket pods for the S8 80mm rockets, which come in a variety of flavors from high explosive to smoke, and each pod holds 20 rockets, so when fully loaded with 6 pods you got 120 of them. Other than rockets, the Mi-8 can also carry bombs, which is unusual for Western helicopters, but most Russian gunships have the option to carry and drop normal iron bombs. And last but not least, the Mi-8 has access to a variety of gun pods, though not every hardpoint can carry every weapon system. Now the gun pods carry either a 23mm autocannon, a 30mm grenade launcher, or, and that for some reason seems to be the most popular option in DCS, 3 Gatling guns in a pod. that being one 50 caliber Gatling gun, the same that is also carried in the nose turret of the Mi-24 Hind, and two 30 caliber Gatling guns per gun bot. Since you can equip two of those bots, that gives the Mi-8 a total of 6 forward-facing Gatling guns, which I think is some kind of record. Though sadly, you can't use all 6 of them at the same time. You have to choose between either the 50 caliber or the 4 30 caliber Gatling guns. Out of all those weapons, the 80mm rockets are probably the most useful, though my personal favorite are the 50 caliber Gatling guns. The 12.7mm rounds are big enough to go through lighter armored vehicles, so it can be used effectively versus a variety of targets, and it is easy to use, with the bullets having a much flatter trajectory than the rockets or the 30mm grenades. And with the tracers you can easily walk your fire on target, even if your gun sight is off. The Mi-8 has no fancy ballistics computer to help you aim, of course. You can adjust the angle of the gun sight, but if your speed, angle of attack and range to the target change a lot, your sight will generally not point exactly to where your weapons will hit, and you have to adjust after the first volley. Well, that's some basic info on the Mi-8. Let's take a look at the mission to show off some of the capabilities of the helicopter in DCS a bit. Now, the scenario here is as follows. A friendly outpost in the city makeup, call sign LC roadblock, was cut off by advancing insurgent forces. The route that connected the outpost to friendly forces is not safe to use at the moment, so an attempt was made to reinforce the outpost by helicopter, but the helicopters got under fire by 23mm anti-aircraft cannons and had to break off their approach. With those guns in the area so close to LC roadblock, trying to land there is too dangerous, as the guns could fire on an almost stationary helicopter as it lands. So here is what we're going to do. A few kilometers west of the city, on a forward fire support base, call sign Firebase Sniper, a friendly artillery battery is located with several 152mm 2S3 Acacia artillery pieces. We, a Mi-8M helicopter, call sign Heavy 2-1, are to head to Firebase Sniper, pick up a small special forces team, including an artillery spotter. We are to insert this team south of LC roadblock at the edge of the city, and they will infiltrate the city to locate and get the exact location of the anti-aircraft pieces. They are most likely set up in an open area to have a good field of fire, so not too close to buildings. And once their location is known, the artillery battery is to open fire on them and take the AA guns out. Then we can pick up reinforcements to reinforce LC roadblock. Together with the reinforcement troops, the troops already at LC roadblock will then break out to recapture the crossroads to the south of the LC, to open up the road again and re-establish supply lines on the ground, and we are to support them in this task. Once the crossroads are retaken by friendly ground troops, the mission is a success. So let's take a look at the mission. Well, we just arrived at Firebase Sniper coming from the airfield and are getting ready to land to pick up a small special forces team. As I was flying to the Firebase, I was doing so from the position of the co-pilot/navigator, which is sitting on the right side of the helicopter, because he has most of the navigation equipment, including the Doppler navigation console. Now that I have the Firebase inside and I'm approaching the land, I have switched to the pilot's seat, which is on the left side. Because here I have the hover indicator, which is also part of the Doppler navigation system, and it helps with the landing. The white lines in the cross show the speed of the helicopter in every direction, forward, backwards, right and left. The faster, the longer the line, similar in appearance to the ammo counter you see in German World War II planes like the Focke-Wulf 90. Now inside this indicator there's also a variometer showing your rate of descent, and below the hover indicator there's the normal variometer, which is a little less accurate but easier to see. Those are also extremely important, because when you go above 4 or 5 meters per second descent rate without enough forward speed, you will get into a vortex ring state, and when that happens on lower altitude, you will most likely crash. So when flying slow or hovering, you always want to have an eye on this variometer to check your descent rate. And we are landed. Not the best landing ever, I had a little bit of sideways momentum, but it works. Now, when we are almost on the ground, the spotter team, call sign Tracker, is contacting us and was giving us coordinates for a construction site south of LC roadblock, where they want us to insert the team, and we order them to board the helicopter. Now, with the coordinates they have given us, which I have written down by the way, I can find the construction site they were talking about on the F10 map, and then use the ruler tool to get the compass direction and distance to it from our current position. And this data I will input in our Doppler navigation system to easily find the desired location. Before I do that though, I also quickly turn the helicopter's lights off, so we are not too easy off in target. It is still early in the morning and dark enough that the lights still do make a difference. Now, when I take a look at the coordinates the spotter team has given us on the map, I can see that the target location is 97 degrees and 6.27 kilometers from our current location. Just a short hop. The spotter team could have made that on foot, but we don't want to risk them being seen approaching the city by enemy forces. With the helicopter getting them closer to the target, they don't have time to move the AA guns should they realize what's going on. Anyway, I start to input the navigational data into the Doppler navigation console. It's quite a simple system and nowhere near as effective as a GPS system, for example, but it is still better than just a compass heading alone. Now the dial all the way at the bottom is where I dial in the heading, plus a bit of correction for magnetic North Pole versus true North Pole. And on top I dial in the distance to the target, minus 6.3 kilometers, more or less. Minus because we are 6.3 kilometers away and we want the thing to count down to 0 from 6.3. The dial on top of that will show us how much we deviated from our flight path to the left or right, so if it says we are a kilometer to the left, we have to turn right to get back to our desired flight path. And we also set the compass heading on our compass for 97 degrees. Now, we are so close to the target that the Doppler system isn't necessary to get there. Just flying a compass heading would be enough, but it is still useful to have the distance information, because I know when it reaches 0 I am at the target location, so I don't miss it and fly too far. Well, the data is in and we are off flying towards the drop location. I fly reasonably low, but not super fancy and above the earth flying either. After all, we don't try to dodge anything really sophisticated, and I doubt the guns that are more in the center of the city can reach out here. Though there might be enemy ground troops, but versus their rifles it is better to fly a little bit higher. Now we get closer to the drop site and I look around for a construction site. I know I am a bit to the right of it, but at first I can't spot it. But I know I am just about at its location as our dial on the Doppler nav system reaches 0. Then I do spot the cranes from the construction site to our left a bit behind us. It is in a bit of a depression, so I didn't see it right away. The cranes should be a good location for the spotter team to overwatch the city and look for targets. Now, being in a bit of a depression, this is not the most convenient landing location I've ever seen. A few hundred meters further to the south would have been more convenient, but on the other hand, being in cover to the south and east by terrain, and mostly in cover by buildings in the other directions, also means that the helicopter should be mostly out of sight when landing. So, should there be enemy ground troops nearby, they can't open fire on the helicopter while it sits on the ground. Hopefully. So I fly a bit closer to the construction site. The landing on the sloped ground is a bit hairy, with again some more sideways momentum as I had planned, but otherwise without an issue, and our team is off, and we are on our way back to Firebase Sniper. Shortly after that. Now we are returning to Firebase Sniper because there the reinforcement ground troops wait for us to get to LC roadblock if the AA is destroyed. Now, flying back we of course just fly the opposite compass heading, and the dial on the Doppler nav system will count back up, being back to 6.3 kilometers where it started when we reach the firebase. Though flying back towards the firebase, the distance information isn't necessary either, since the firebase is easy to spot being the only larger village in this area, so you can't really miss it anyway. As we land, the reinforcement troops are already waiting, and just as we are about to touch down, the spotter team calls in and reports that it has found the two 23mm anti-aircraft guns and gives the coordinates of them. That being 44 degrees 36 minutes and 57 seconds north and 40 degrees 5 minutes 45 seconds east, and our 152mm guns can use those coordinates to fire on. After the motto, if you want it done right, do it yourself, I take command of the artillery battery for a second and input the target coordinates the guns are supposed to fire at, and when I'm done with that, I double check that the coordinates do indeed point towards the likely position of AA guns inside the expected area, and not in the completely wrong direction, as can easily happen if you get a degree wrong. If you get your seconds wrong by 1 or so, you might still be in the somewhat correct area, but if you actually get a degree wrong, you might end up one city over. I also check they are aiming at a somewhat open area and not right at the building. And when they do, I give the order to fire on those coordinates. Now the guns need a minute or two to get ready to fire now, and while they are getting ready I order the reinforcement troops to board the helicopter. Now, since we are expected to support those troops as well as those at the LC roadblock in their counterattack towards the crossroad, there is one more thing to do, getting the weapons ready. I'm carrying two S8 rocket bots with high explosive warheads, not the armor-piercing variety, but I don't expect anything heavily enough armored to need that. The high explosive ones are enough for lightly armored ones and better versus troops. And on the middle pylons I also carry two gun bots with Gatling guns. The inner pylons are empty, since I am also carrying troops I did not go for the full weapon load, so I don't get too heavy. With 10 troops in the back it's still heavy enough with only 4 pilots carrying ordnance. Now just as the last soldier is about to get on the helicopter, the artillery is ready to fire and opens up on the target, firing 2 rounds per tube on it. Now the rounds need a bit to reach the target, but they are apparently hitting exactly where they are needed, when they do, and our spotter team calls in and confirms that the guns are taken out, so we are good to go. And with our reinforcement troops loaded, I start to fly towards LC roadblock, and I at first bypass the landing zone a bit to the south and then approach the landing zone coming from the east. I hope I can land approaching from this direction without picking up any small arms fire, since most of the enemy ground troops are to the north and some directly west at the crossroads. Now, once we are on the ground and the troops have left the helicopter, our counterattack starts right away, so the opposing forces have little time to react. Now, I'm approaching the helipads. At first I plan to land on the one to the north, just because it happens to be in front of my nose as I approach, but then I figure with the enemy troops at the crossroads ahead, not too far away, it might be better to take the pad more to the south, as then there should be a building in front of me giving me cover as I land. So I set the helicopter down on this landing pad, and once I am on the ground give the troops the order to disembark. Now the enemy troops apparently have seen me land, and once I'm just touching down they start to fire towards the landing zone and my helicopter. At first they hit a bit to the north of it, but some of their fire eventually also starts hitting my helicopter, with the buildings in front of me not offering the cover I hoped they would, so I want to get off this helipad as fast as possible, but I have to wait for the troops to get off first. In the meantime, the armored cars stationed at the LC start to attack towards the enemy and suppress some of their fire, and as soon as everyone on my helicopter is off, I take off and point my nose towards the enemy to engage them. The enemy troops are just to the west, and I plan to attack them with my 80mm rockets. Now, there are some enemy vehicles next to the road, lightly armored personnel carriers, but our armored cars have taken 2 of them out already, and at the moment I can't see any other vehicles, so I fire my rockets at infantry I can see next to the road. Having just taken off from the helipad, I'm low and slow, and I take a few hits from the infantry's AKs, leading to some holes in the cockpit glass, but no serious damage as of yet. So I pull up again and gain some altitude to get away from the enemy's rifle fire. Though it seems now the enemy ground troops are busy with our own troops closing in on them anyway. So I turn around and fire the rest of my rockets at a high angle from above. Most of the enemy vehicles are taken out already, but not all, and they have machine guns too, but they are not meant for anti-aircraft work, which means they can't elevate their guns up too high, so if you attack them at a high angle from above, they usually can't shoot back. Now, with most of my 80mm rockets expended in those 2 attack runs, I switch to my gun pods and select the 250caliber Gatling guns in them, and I start to engage the position of enemy troops I saw earlier with it, spraying the area where I saw tracers come from with the large caliber machine gun bullets. And at the same time our friendly troops reach the crossroads. However, now I can spot one more enemy vehicle at the northwest corner of the crossroads, which our troops have not seen yet, as it is behind the building, so that's my next target. The 50caliber guns are enough to get through the thin armor of this old armored personnel carrier. Our armored cars are starting to engage the enemy APC as they are coming around the corner, firing at it with their heavy machine guns, and I add my 50caliber rounds to their fire from above, firing at the thinner roof armor of the armored personnel carrier. And the enemy vehicle is quickly taken out. Now all the enemy vehicles are taken care of, but I can still see some more tracers from enemy troops a bit further back, and I attack their position as well. First with the 2 50caliber Gatling guns, and then as their ammo is depleted with the 4 30caliber Gatling guns as well. And the enemy resistance stops quickly after that. I do a low pass in the end to make sure nothing is left, and nothing is. We got the crossroad and that was the target. The mission is a success. So I head back to the airfield and get there just in time before I run out of fuel in my damaged helicopter. So this is it for this mission. I hope I could show off some of the capabilities of the Mi-8M in DCS. As with all helicopters in the game, I think this model is very enjoyable and you got a lot of options for things to do, though the Mi-8M is probably more learning intensive than the UE. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.